Thank you so much. Big round of applause to all the previous speakers. All the talks have been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Big thanks to the staff putting on Generate. They've been so good that I really thought about making a last-minute change to my presentation and changing the title to "And Now for Something Completely Different." Because the bar is set pretty high. Let me actually first start off by telling you thank you. I know we're all busy, and thank you in advance for taking time to actually show up and sit through my talk. I hope it's useful, and if it's not, I'm a comedian and I'm used to bombing. So just put it with those over there. I like to start all my talks by answering two very important questions. Who is this guy, and why should we listen to him? Perfectly fair questions. So my name's Joseph Palumbo. Full disclosure, I'm not a designer, I'm not a developer, I'm not a UX, UI expert. My background is in customer success, and I've been doing it for about 12 years now. And I've worked for some really cool companies along the way. I worked for Rackspace, I worked for Apple, I was a mentor at Techstars, and currently I work for a really cool company in Los Angeles called Media Temple. And the interesting thing is, I'll give you a few examples throughout my talk, but some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about, we're actually putting into use there, and we're actually getting really good results. The interesting thing about customer success is it's becoming more popular because it works. A lot of companies are looking for folks with my skill set. So over the last 10 years, my career has kind of been going steadily upward. And in 2015, I got named as the VP of Customer Success for one of the biggest and most successful VC firms and tech incubators in Texas. And it was the absolute height of my career. And I did what anybody does when they're at the height of their career. I quit my job to do stand-up comedy. By the way, that's not a conversation you want to have with your wife. Hey, sweetie, you know that paycheck that pays for our lives and the benefits that keeps our kids healthy? That's gone now. Oh, but the upside is I'm going to be spending every night in bars and clubs. No, I have another job. It just pays me in hot wings. The truth is, I wanted an exercise in fearlessness. I had been responsible and working my entire adult life, and I legitimately had an opportunity to take a year off of work. And I really wanted to do something amazing. I wanted to mark something major off that bucket list. Interestingly enough, a lot of my friends and colleagues were doing the same thing, but they were taking a little bit of a different route. They were all preparing to climb mountains. Like real mountains. Like the kind of mountain where you can die next to your Sherpa in Tibet kind of mountain. I submit to you this picture to show that I have the physique for comedy. Not so much for mountain climbing. And I just want to point out, too, how stupid is it that I put a picture of myself when I'm right here? As if you needed any more evidence that I am fat. I got winded climbing this stage. I'm not doing Everest. So I decided I was going to do comedy. But here's the thing. I wasn't just going to go do some open mics. I wanted to become a professional comedian. I wanted to make my job making people laugh. That was my challenge. By the way, just to get out of the way, because I get this question all the time, what does it take to become a stand-up comedian? It takes 3 things. Here's the pie chart that I usually draw for people. That 1% actually being funny. True. The 49% making people laugh. Oh, it's not the same thing. It's not at all. We're going to learn more about that. 50%, if you have this, you're halfway there. And that is masochism, self-loathing, delusions, narcissism, or just plain crazy. That's what it takes. So when I started out on this crazy journey, I wanted to unlock the code of how to become a professional comedian. Now, fortunately, I knew some comedians and I knew some club owners, and I started doing research, right? And what I heard, the general consensus was that from your first open mic to having any chance of getting anywhere near the stage of an actual comedy club, at best, 2 years. So that was my goal. That's what they tell you, by the way. What they don't tell you is in that 2 years, you're going to do 1,000 horrible open mics, you're going to bomb 500 times, you're going to deal with 57 hecklers, 6.5 bar fights, 2 nervous breakdowns, 1 existential crisis, and you're going to eat a metric ton of greasy bar food. All of a sudden, mountain climbing seems a little bit safer and more healthy. So 2 years was the mark. From the moment I did my first open mic to the moment I took the stage at the Improv, which was my local comedy club in San Antonio, Texas, it took me 6 months. And the question I get is, well, how did you do it so quickly? Well, I did it quickly because very early on, I realized that comedy is about user experience. When people go to a comedy club, sure, they're there for a couple of jokes, they're there to get some drinks, they want to laugh, but what really wins them over and what really solidifies you in their mind as a comedian that they want to see again is user experience. And so fortunately, even though I'm not an expert in UX, I had worked with a lot of UX and UI people. I had learned some things. And I thought, well, hey, let me try and actually put some of this to this whole crazy comedy thing, and maybe I'll feel legitimate, right? Maybe it'll make some sense. Before we start getting into that, I did want to spend a little bit of time talking about the anatomy of comedy. Comedy is, as much as it is an art, it is a science. It is a craft. Anyone can learn how to do it. And there are parts and pieces that I just want to kind of break down a little bit. On the subatomic level of comedy, you have 3 things. You have the setup, you have the punchline, and can anyone tell me the third one? Well, hopefully, right? That's the chemical reaction. You have the tag. Setup, punchline, tag. This is the proton, neutron, and electron floating around inside of every joke you've ever heard. You put these together, you get a joke. You get enough jokes together, you get a bit. You get enough bits together, you get a chunk. You have a couple of chunks together, you get a set. You get a set together, you have an act, and if you have an act, you can go back to your day job and tell all your coworkers you do comedy at night, and they will never come and see you. That's how that works. That's the anatomy of comedy. By the way, I just want to say this. Shout out to the very first speaker yesterday. I'm so sorry, I can't remember her name right now. She did a wonderful presentation on storytelling, and it really resonated with me because the whole setup, punchline, and tag, that's a story. That's a story condensed down to its most important and minimal components. There is a beginning, a middle, an end. There's a climax, there's a resolution, and the objective of a joke is crystal clear. Get the laugh. And that's kind of what I like about comedy. You sort of know if it works or it doesn't right out of the gate. I like that. I like that. So let's talk about comedy and user experience. Okay, this is going to be super boring, but I'm going to read this quote to you. No product is an island. A product is more than the product. It is a cohesive, integrated set of experiences. Think through all the stages of a product or a service, from initial intentions through final reflections, from first usage to help, service, and maintenance. Make them all work together seamlessly. Don Norman, inventor of the term user experience. Well, comedian's product potentially is 2 things. It's the joke, but it's also the comedian. So if you change a few words in this quote, it kind of works for what I was trying to do. No joke is an island. A set is more than the jokes. It is a cohesive, integrated set of experiences told through jokes. Think through all the stages of a set, from your opener through your closer, from your first step on stage to gestures, pauses, and crowd work. Make them all work together seamlessly. Joseph Palumbo, a guy who did comedy. I'll take credit for that. So here's what comedy taught me about user experience. This is obviously what you came to hear, more or less. First and foremost, this is one of the most important things, and this is going to be sort of a recurring theme. Comedy is a conversation. Listen to the audience. So it looks like, when you look at comedy, it is a man or a woman standing on stage with a microphone talking at an audience. It looks like a monologue. It's not at all. There is a dialogue happening there. As a comedian, you were telling your jokes to the audience, and they are communicating back to you, either through their laughter, through their silence. You can see through the crowd. You can see if they're looking at their phone, if they're calling for their waiter over, asking for another round of drinks because, oh my God, I need another drink if I'm going to deal with this comedian for one more minute. You can see the looks on their face. And there's an energy in the room. Like, I'm sure people here have been to a comedy club, and I'm sure people here have been to a comedy club where the comedian has bombed. That feeling is palpable, right? And trust me, the comedian feels it. So there's a dialogue. Listen to your audience. I love the word conversation. To me, comedy is a conversation. I love the word conversation because when I see it, and I've never done extensive research into the etymology of the word conversation, I got better things to do with my life. I see the word convert. When you have a conversation, it's an exchange of ideas with somebody else. It's an exchange of energy with somebody else. They're not trying to change your mind. You don't have your mind changed. But if somebody just lets you know how they're looking at a similar thing, you should walk away a little bit changed from that. You should at least gain a little bit more perspective. And I love that. I love having great conversations. And this is a critical component to my job as a customer success manager. And it was a critical component to my job as a comedian. Because of this, it doesn't matter what I think is funny. The audience will tell me what's funny. I have this thing that I say a lot. I'm not funny, but I make people laugh. And the reason I say that is because all the jokes that I think are funny don't work on stage. They just don't. When I was writing jokes that I thought were hilarious, I bombed every time. So, and you can, I'm here with a few coworkers, you can ask them, I'm pretty dark. Pretty dark, all right? I'm kind of out there. It's cool, I totally get it. But once I understood that my job wasn't to make me laugh, my job was to make the audience laugh, completely changed how I approached the creation of my material. And I think this is key. This is so important here. I'm not funny, but I make people laugh. My job is to make the audience laugh. We had a conversation at work the other day. We were really trying to optimize communications with a large set of our customers. Internally, we all love Slack. We use Slack all the time. It is quick, it's easy, it's always on. And so we just thought, you know what, let's just give our customers a dedicated Slack channel directly to their customer success manager, maybe to a top-level engineer, and they'll love it. And we started going through with it. This is quick, this is easy. Oh, our customers are going to just love this. Okay, but do I think that's funny, or do my customers think that's funny? So I got on the call, just picked 10 customers at random. They knew who I am. Called them up and was like, hey, so what do you think is better? A Slack channel to your support team, or if we could somehow optimize for phone support and get you through the phone line faster? Every single one of them said the phone. So I had to go back to my team and go like, hey, with the Slack thing, stop that. We're not doing that. Yeah, our customers don't think that's funny. Or maybe they do, and that's the problem. So we ended up optimizing for phone support, and our customers love it. It's fantastic. But this is sort of what I'm talking about. It's very quick and easy to kind of go with what you think is the right thing, but in comedy, it doesn't matter what you think at all. And it's a big part of comedy is just getting over yourself, which is honestly a big part of life. Just getting over yourself, right? Don't take yourself too seriously. But honestly, I ask myself this question, I don't know how many times a day. Are you solving for the customer, or are you solving for internal processes? Anytime we have a problem to solve, I think the natural inclination is to go, well, you know, the easiest thing to do is to go ahead and just do this, this, and this, because that's the way that we're designed as an organization. It doesn't always work for the customer. You have to look at this from the side of the customer journey. And this really was imprinted on me and pounded into me every night, sometimes multiple times at night, when I was trying to become a professional stand-up comedian. It doesn't matter if I think it's funny, the customer will tell me if it's funny. Everything needs to be examined from the customer's perspective. Is anyone here familiar with the 5% rule of product management? It's not talked about too often. There's this sort of conversation going around, mostly in the startup world, that customers will only use or value about 5% of your available feature set. That's it. Doesn't matter if you have 100 features, they're going to use 5 of them. That's kind of the standard. Now, the good thing is, if you can figure out that 5%, focus on that. And your product is going to be that much more successful. And you have to work a lot less, right? Because now you're only worrying about 5 features instead of 100. The example that I like to give to my team over at Media Temple is, if you're in the dog food bowl business, and by the way, yes, I was surprised too, this is a dog food bowl. Apparently it's a slow feeder dog food bowl. I don't know, didn't work for me. But if you're in the dog food bowl business, nice one. But everyone's using it as a Frisbee, guess what? You just got in the Frisbee business. Your customers will tell you it's funny. Your customers will tell you what they want if you're smart enough and humble enough to listen to them. Your customers will tell you how to succeed if you just listen to them, and an audience will tell you what's funny if you just listen to them when you're on stage. So the thing you have to do when you're on stage is figure out your audience and do it quickly. The ultimate decider on your success or failure as a comedian is the audience. There's this great quote by this comedian named Andy Kindler that I really like. After extensive analysis, my target audience is men around my age who are me. I got you, Andy. I got you. Quick side note, I fixed his iPhone one time. True story. Yeah, no, he just had a setting wrong. It's true, though. It's so easy to solve from like this very narrow perspective of like where we're sitting at. But the great thing about comedy is that in order to actually succeed and to become a professional comedian, you really got to get the heck out of your head, man. You really have to project yourself sitting next to the people that are looking at you like, make me laugh, funny boy. That's the only way that's going to work. The problem, though, is you have to figure out that audience, right? There's this thing that it's just me, I've never read this, it's called the comedic continuum. And I think that when you're looking at an audience, or you're looking at people that enjoy comedy, there's really kind of two ends of the spectrum. Like on one side, you got like George Carlin, right? I think we all know who George Carlin is. A very smart, very witty, sort of idealistic. He was very quick with his tongue. Like, I mean, he was a really kind of set the bar for like smart, witty, satirical comedians. So on one side you have Carlin, and on the other side you have Cable Guy. Now, let me be very clear. I am not bagging on Cable Guy. Like, dude has a career, okay? Dude has something I want. And he figured out how to do it. But his approach is certainly different, right? He kind of goes for a little bit more of the lower-hanging fruit, a little bit more, spoon-feeding his punchlines to his audience. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. The problem that you have to solve as a comedian is, and as anybody who's solving for user experience problems, for customer success problems, growing any type of product, is your audience is going to span this spectrum. So how do you solve for all of them? And particularly when you're a comedian and you've got like 5 minutes on stage and you got to make all these people laugh, how do you do that? It's kind of hard. I always like to joke that comedians are the bullfighters of the entertainment industry, and that every audience is like a new bull, right? Because they're kind of coming after you. Secretly, comedy is like NASCAR. Like, you kind of want to see a wreck, right? No, it's cool. I'm the same way. Totally. Like I said, dark. When a comedian gets on stage, they have a couple of jokes. Typically, if they're a skilled, crafted comedian, they have a couple of jokes that will tell them what kind of audience they're dealing with, right? In fact, one of the things that a lot of comedians will talk about when we're on the road or we're just hanging out is the perfect first joke. The perfect first joke should tell you, or should tell the audience who you are, and it should tell you something about the audience. And usually it takes about 1 to 3 jokes to kind of get a bearing, but you have to do it. So when you get in front of an audience, it's just like a bull. You got to figure it out. And so when I get up on stage, I would always just have like the first 30 to 45 seconds, just let me figure this audience out so I can have some hope of actually making them laugh and being a little entertaining. And the cool thing too is for every say 5 minutes that a comedian does on stage, they probably have 25 minutes floating around in their brain ready to go, right? Because that's they just don't know. If you say a funny joke and people are just really? That's what you're coming with? Then you're like, okay, I need to shift because this set's not going to work. And this is kind of what it's like when I'm coming up with the processes that I use to manage my customers. I will kind of show them what I think is funny, what I think is going to work. But normally, the first few things that we push out in terms of product and processes, they're a test. They're really to try to figure out from a 50% to 50-50 basis, Do customers like this or not? Does this solve the customer? We try to rule something out. And the person who spoke just before me did a phenomenal job at really kind of deep diving into this. But this is absolutely critical to having a chance not only at being a professional comedian, but also in solving your customers' problems. I'm going to kind of go against the grain now a little bit. So I don't want to confuse anyone, but this is always an interesting thing that we like to talk about a lot when I hang out with my comedian friends. Do you pick your audience or do you let your audience pick you? This is a really interesting question because there's two ways that you can actually do this. So first of all, you can pick the audience you want, right? You can understand who they are, you can understand their background, and you can just become relatable to them by writing jokes that they would immediately get. Larry the Cable Guy, right? So this is where most people start off with, because as a new comedian, the audience you want is anyone that will pay to see you. It's that simple. So you write jokes that are going to be easily relatable, like, just have mass appeal, and that's the way that you go with it. But there's another sort of school of thought that I'm just really intrigued with, and that is write for yourself and see who pays attention. Write the thing that you think is funny. Don't worry about pleasing a specific audience, and wait for your tribe to come to you. This is really effective, but it's time-consuming and it's cumbersome. But the comedians that do this, they're the ones, they're probably never going to be like Madison Square Garden type comedians, but they will always work, and they will always have a loyal fan base. And honestly, and I bring this up, and I don't have a definitive answer for you. I really, really wish I did. I'm still working through this one. But in terms of building a business, in terms of bringing new products to market, in terms of like increasing, or improving or optimizing our user experience, I think about this a lot. Do we pick the audience first and go after them? Or do we go to market with what we think is right, what we think is the solution to a problem, and we just let the customers that agree with us come to us? So I'm not gonna lie, don't have an answer for you, but just food for thought, absolutely. We'll come back to that. If anyone can figure that out, email me, because I would love to know, and I'm gonna tell my boss I came up with that solution. Keep it simple. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you a story. Oh, by the way, yeah, nobody cares how smart you are. No one, really. So I'm gonna tell you a story. Okay, I'm doing comedy for like a month, doing open mics, and I'm doing good. I'm doing well. And at my home club, the Improv in San Antonio, Texas, a couple times a year, they have this thing called the New Faces Showcase. That's what they say to the audience. Internally, it's an audition. If you're doing well at open mics, if other headliners are seeing you perform at like bar shows and stuff like that, and they're a little impressed, they'll go back to the booker and say, hey, check out this dude Palumbo. It looks like he may know what he's doing. So I get a call one day and they're like, hey, we want you to be on the New Faces Showcase. Now, I knew exactly what this was. So I get 10 minutes in front of a paying audience, first time ever in a comedy club. I was, beyond nervous, right? And I've done a lot of speaking for my career, but oh my God, this one really, really got to me. So I go up there. Out of the 8 or so comedians that were going up for that night, we're all open micers trying to get one slot. Everyone kind of said, like, dude, you're the favorite. Like, you're killing it out there. I'm like, thanks, man, thanks. I go up there, I do my 10 minutes, and bombed. I mean bombed. I'm talking 10 minutes of silence, you guys. Not a single laugh. It was devastating. Because not only did I just bomb in front of my first, comedy club appearance ever, I bombed in front of the booker, who basically is the gatekeeper to the job that I want, right? Imagine the worst interview, the job interview that you've ever sat through, okay? Multiply it by 100, and then put like 40 people in the room watching you do it. That's what it felt like. Fortunately, the host that night was this really funny guy. His name's Joey McCormick. He's still a headliner. In fact, he's performing in New York here real soon. So those of you that are local, I don't know where he's performing, but if you see him, seriously, he's absolutely worth spending some time checking out his act. He took mercy on me, and he pulled me aside, and he said, look, man, I'm one of the guys who recommended you for this New Faces Showcase. I think you're smart. You're clearly a good joke writer. Your jokes are smart. They're witty. They're clever. They're interesting. But you forgot one thing. And I was like, what's that, Joey? And he said, you're talking to drunk people. Oh yeah, Joey, I forgot about that. Okay. He said they're tired, they just came from work, they're stressed, they've probably been out in the sun all day. Don't make them think, dude. And when he said that, I remember as I was going through my set horrifically in slow motion in my head, looking out to the audience and kind of seeing a little bit of this in the audience. Apparently they weren't digging my whole bit on the 3/5 compromise. Which I'm not going to do the whole bit for you, but I will say this. 3/5 compromise, those of you that, I'm not going to even explain it to you, but I will say this. My whole bit was, if you want to change social behavior, just add math to it. Particularly fractions, no one wants to do it then. Okay, so I clearly had a lot of these crazy, interesting, funny jokes that the comedians thought were funny, but the paying audience didn't think was funny. So basically, I had to go home, and I spent the next 4 hours oscillating between crying and then taking my jokes from something like this to something like this. But you know what? The laughs came. It worked. It totally, totally worked. Simplicity is the essence of my existence now. We deliver our product, our service, our experience on technology. But you know what? We have competitors. There are other people that do things better than us. There's one thing that I think my team does better than anyone else, and this isn't a pitch for Media Temple or anything like that. This is just what I believe in, and this is what I strive for. We deliver simplicity as a service. The mantra of my team is this: business is complex, technology is complex, life is complex. If we are not simplifying any of the above, why are we here and what are we doing? I pound this into my team every day. They all have a standing mandate. As we are going through the UX process, as we're looking at the UI, as we're building processes of service delivery, go to market with our products, are we simplifying our customers' lives? Several people have come up here and talked about doing research, talking to your customers. I do that all the time. And what I try to get at is, where's the complexity in your life? How do we simplify it? Yes, you can get the same product from so many other companies. Yes, you might even be able to get a more superior product. You might even be able to get better service, whatever. I don't know. But if I can simplify business, technology, and sometimes even life for our customers, they will remember. And this was pounded into me doing comedy. Failure is not an option. It's mandatory, guys. Welcome to life. So I bombed. Cool, not a problem. That's part of the process, being a comedian. There's this thing called the golden ratio of joke writing. And the golden ratio basically says you have to write 9 bad jokes to get 1 good joke. Okay, that's not a horrible ratio. But how do you know they're bad jokes? Okay, well, fortunately there's a framework for that. Step 1, write a new bit. Step 2, think it's the best bit ever. Step 3, drive to the comedy club like a boss. Tell the joke. And the audience will tell you, no. It's not funny, Mr. Funny Man. Not at all. I can't tell you how many times I wrote something and I was like, oh my God, this is my Netflix special. This joke on semicolons, this is it, guys. Book the flight to LA. Bless you. But here's the good thing about comedy. You go back, you do it again, you get back up, you figure it out. You go back and you work the same joke time and time and time again. You change things, you change your timing. You figure it out. Every night, a couple times a night, 3 to 5 minutes at a time, you get in front of an audience and they don't laugh until they do. Comedy is a lot like, or comedy, much like user experience, cannot exist in a vacuum. This is just a sad truth of business. It needs a user, right? I challenge you guys to create an open mic for your product. And a lot of people talk about focus groups and customer advisory councils and talking to customers, and you know what? I hear that all the time. I've heard that from almost every company that I went and joined, and when I show up, not so much. Looks good on paper, but how often do we actually pick up our phones or email our customers, text them, whatever. So now when I have a thought, when I have my next great joke, I think, okay, how do I open mic this? How do I get this in front of a customer? And sometimes it's just telling them telling them the joke, telling them my idea. Sometimes it's figuring out how do we just get quick and dirty in front of a customer? How do we just open mic this to where if I'm gonna bomb now, and I'm gonna figure out this doesn't work. But you know what? Then I figure out why, or then I realize that doesn't work, and then I start, okay, what's the next one? What's the next one? What's the next one? You keep doing it. Failure is not an option, it's mandatory. How do you know user experience is bad? Users tell you. Listen to your users because much like comedy, user experience is a conversation. It's not a one-way street. Sweat the details. I'm just talking about workshopping jokes up here, right? You don't just go back and say the same joke over and over again. That's the definition of crazy, guys. Pair that with somebody who thought doing comedy was a good idea. That's insane. Sweat the details. I love this quote from Jack Benny. A comic says funny things. A comedian says things funny. Anything is funny. The world is a mine of comedic fodder. Anything is a fair premise. There is humor in everything. It is the job of the comedian to find it and communicate it, articulate it, optimize it, get the laugh, right? Anything is funny. So sometimes it's not the joke, it's the person telling it. It's the delivery. This is something that product managers hate to hear. I'm just gonna say that right now. Sometimes it's not the joke, it's the person telling it. Sometimes it's not the product, it's the way it's being delivered. This is one of my favorite quotes in the world, and it has been since I was in high school. The difference between the almost right word and the right word is really a large matter. 'Tis the difference between the lightning bug and the lightning. Mark Twain. The difference between the lightning and the lightning bug is one word. And people who work with me, particularly in the marketing team, hate working with me because I sweat the words. I'm all about the one word. This is a comedian named Chris Titus. Never worked with him, but I was working the door at the comedy club trying to earn some extra money because I was a broke comedian. And he was workshopping his one-man show, which I now believe you can see on Netflix. This guy was the epitome of sweating the details. He had a show that ran about an hour and 15 minutes long. He nailed it every single night. He recorded every single show. And when something didn't get a laugh, he went back and he looked at every conceivable variable. Was it my gesture? Was it my timing? Was it joke placement? Did I flub a word? Am I using the wrong word for the punchline? And the next show he would go out and he would do the same exact show with one or two small changes. And he figured out how to make every minute of that show work. I have mad respect for that guy. Another guy, too, that I actually got to meet, Ralphie May, rest in peace, one of his biggest advices to anyone who opened for him who had a beard was, dude, shave your beard. Don't wear a cap and shave your beard. Comedy is in the eyes. Comedy is in the expression. People need to know how you feel, and they see it in your face. You're covering half your face. And I said, but Ralphie, I'm fat. And he goes, bro, look at me. It's a true story. Timing, word selection, delivery, gestures, pauses, joke placement. These are all of the crazy little variables that comedians obsess over to try to get jokes to work. And it'd be funny because I would be at my laptop for hours at a time, right? And my wife would be like, what are you doing? I'd be like, I'm optimizing. She goes, what? And I was like, a fart joke. Serious business over here, Liz. Tell a story, but use a framework. Once again, going back to the very first presentation for those of you that were here yesterday, I just loved it. Look, we are wired to be social creatures. We are wired to respond to stories. We love stories. We love organization. We love these frameworks. You could always tell an open mic, you could always tell somebody who's brand new to comedy, A, they're not funny, but B, so one time, you guys, my friend and I, we were hanging out, and there was this other guy, but we didn't know him, and then this funny thing happened. Dude, you're making the audience work for the joke. They're gonna hate you. Don't make them work for the laugh. Comedy is about finding the shortest distance between setup and punchline. It's the shortest distance to funny. People like structure. People like organization. It's everywhere. It should be part of our lives, our daily working lives, specifically the people in this room. And we have structure in comedy. And this is why I say being funny is not that important in comedy. If you learn this, if you learn how to put this together and use this effectively, anyone can become a comedian. Trust me, I'm not funny, but I make people laugh. More importantly, frameworks let you know if it's working. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys a joke that I wrote. I got a dog collar today. It was a wrong number. Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. But let's look at it. I got a dog collar today, set up, punchline, it was a wrong number, laugh should be on the number. Comedians who respect the craft, they know every word where the laugh should happen. I promise you. I know it looks like they go up there and they were like, oh, in this, blah, blah. No. Every working comedian knows the funny word. And when they record their set and they go back and they hear that word uttered and there's not a laugh followed right behind it, it didn't work. But you don't know that if you don't use the framework. So the other thing I really love about frameworks, and when I'm working with customers and I'm pushing things out, I'm thinking about the full user experience, I love using a framework because it lets me know, okay, this thing I want should happen here, and if it doesn't happen, it didn't work. I can't tell you how many times I've been at companies and they've run experiments and they've done stuff and they're like, we think it worked. What do you mean you think it worked? Either it did or it didn't. This is a great thing about a framework. Okay, getting ready to wrap this up. Here's the great secret for comedy. This is sort of like, looking behind, like how the magician, says the trick. Tell them when to laugh. Tell them when to laugh. Who here can tell me the international signal for this is your time to laugh? Anyone? Laugh? Okay, well, I like your style. I heard a waka waka back there. Fozzie Bear, you're still in New York? Awesome. I'm going to buy you a beer, Fozzie Bear. It's the rim shot. So back in vaudevillian days, there's this great book called The Comedians. If you guys are comedy nerds like I am, there's this great book called The Comedians, and they actually tell the story that back in the day, when they would travel from village to village to village before TV, before radio, people had never sat through a show before. They didn't know what was going on. They literally had to figure out a way to tell the audience, this is the funny part. Companies do this all the time now. Every time you order your crazy, weird thing at Starbucks, what do? They yell it back in their own language, in Starbuckese. They do it because they want you to learn how to order the drink better, right? Companies do this all the time. I love this quote by Jerry Seinfeld. This is from a fantastic book called Sick in the Head by Judd Apatow. And he basically says, look, Atlantic City, it's enough if you can get them to just listen to you. I do the same act, but it's a different type of performance. It's much more instructive because they don't know where the laughs are in my act because it's not two men walk in a bar, bum, 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 punchline. Comedians have things that they will do to tell customers where to laugh. You guys probably do not remember this comedian. His name is Alonzo Hamburger Jones. Every time he would say a joke, he would just yell out the word hamburger. Okay, that's a career, but it worked. Every time he would yell the word hamburger, he'd get a laugh. Jeff Foxworthy, you might be a redneck. He didn't really have to say anything that funny. If you go to Starbucks and you do that, you might be a redneck. People are going to laugh because they know that that's the funny part. It happens all the time. So a lot of the things that we do, and from a customer success perspective, is how do we train the customers to do the things that will make them successful and ultimately make us successful? Coming up on the end here, so let the audience figure it out sometimes. So people love to learn, but they don't always like to be taught. Customers love to figure stuff out. They love that aha moment. Comedy has metrics, you guys. Yes, comedy has metrics. Everything has metrics. We have the laughs per minute. So every time, this is legit. No, I'm not making this up. This My 3/5 compromise, still not working. I love that joke, though. Laughs per minute, LPMs, you guys. A booker is talking to another booker. They're like, hey, man, I'm going to hire this dude Palumbo. Here, he gave this great talk in New York at Generate, man. What's the deal with him? Oh, his LPMs are 4. That's money. My LPMs are 4, by the way, and that is pretty good. But no, seriously, though. Every comedian who actually gives a darn about his or her career has a chart like this. We have our bits on the bottom. By the way, CrossFit and heroin, I love it. It's a great bit. And we track the laughs that we get and also the ones where we get disdain. But this is what we talk about. And there's this great little thing that comedians will do where if you let the customer, if you're sort of projecting a punchline that's pretty common sense, right? Sometimes if you just shut up, the customer will think, oh, I know what's coming, and they'll laugh. And then you say the punchline, and they laugh again, and your LPMs go up. Here's the last thing I'm going to talk about, you guys. Comedy, in my opinion, is giving them a new take on something familiar. People talk about disruption all the time, especially in this industry. Disruption only works if there's a point of reference. People have to know what you're disrupting in order for them to appreciate the disruption. I was a competitive chess player for a lot of years, and one of the things I love about comedy is when you're writing a joke, you have to look at it from a premise every single angle. Just the way when I would look at a chessboard when I was 18, 19, 20, I would have to think about every single variation, every single chessic move. I would spend hours doing this, just why I would spend hours working on that fart joke. Never use the first punchline. Always go 3 layers deep. This was told to me by Alex Kool-Aid Ansel. By the way, once again, paid in hot wings, pretty obvious. We're all fat dudes. Alex Kool-Aid Ansel, he's one of my best friends. He has a show out on the Hollywood Strip right now. If you're ever in Hollywood, go check him out. First punchline that you write, everyone's going to write it. Everyone's going to write it. Second one, you're getting warmer. Third punchline, that one's yours. That is uniquely yours. When you guys are coming up with messaging, when you guys are coming up with product ideas, when you guys are coming up with anything that's going to be customer-facing, never go with the first one. Shrug off the second one. Try to go at least 3 layers deep. I promise you, your customers will notice. It will be unique. It's not going to be, they're not going to see it on every other website. You got to look at premises from every single angle. So here's one of the last things I'm going to tell you. If you have a hard problem at work that you're trying to solve, I don't care what kind of problem it is, try to write a joke about it. Totally serious. And you're like, I've never written a joke. Okay, neither have I, really. But try to write a joke about it. It forces you to look at it from every single angle. And if you're like, well, how do I write a joke? Seriously, though, there are some books out there. Google it, how to write a joke. There are frameworks. It's actually not that hard. Guys, in closing, I found this on the internet when I was doing some research for this talk, and I just thought it would be very appropriate. A user interface, it's like a joke. You have to explain it. It's not that good. Guys, my name's Joseph Palumbo. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.